Okay. So our list of members really, well, Ineos is our new member this year. And so these are the folks who've paid dues in the last year, and we'll continue to reach out to others to bring some other folks along. Any questions on the minutes from the December 1st meeting? They were included in the meeting packet. There aren't any questions. If I can have a motion to approve the minutes as they were presented, you can do that by raising your hand in on the screen there. I usually track that, or you can just go ahead and say your name.
Pete.
Pete. All right, motion made by Pete. Can I get a second? I got Ed. I'll launch my poll. You can just click your answer and hit submit. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business being the slate of officers. We have the same continued participation on the board with the addition of Zach Brown from the Village of Frankfurt. We still do have we have 2 more potential slots that we can fill on the executive board. So in the future, if there are folks who are interested in participating on the board, definitely reach out. Any questions? Otherwise, if we can get a motion to approve the slate as presented. Oops, sorry. So then you can just unmute yourself or raise your hand. I can record that.
Leonard will make a motion.
And okay, and can I get a second to the motion? Anyone?
Pete.
Pete. All right, thanks, Pete. You can click your answer and hit submit. Thank you very much. Motion carried. Okay, so I'm going to go over some items in the budget. So we sent the budget out to members in December, and then I've included it as an attachment in the last couple of emails that came through Constant Contact. So I have all the sheets were in there. I've included a couple of the sheets here for discussion, but kind of as an overview, we're looking kind of from planning purposes for the next budget cycle, looking at our next monitoring cycle. So over the next 5 years. But today we'll only be approving the budget for the 23-24 fiscal year, which would start on March 1st. But again, the other columns in there for planning purposes. One of the driving changes in the budget was related to the monitoring section. So we had in the last round of monitoring, we jointly with the DRCW, the DuPage River Salt Creek Work Group, and with the Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition, we all jointly went out for a general services contract for laboratory work. So collection of samples as well as analysis. And we had a agreement for a 5-year period holding costs. Post COVID, costs of everything obviously have gone up, but the cost for lab work went up well beyond kind of the 3% inflation rate that we normally use for planning. So we went back out for, well, just talk about this later as well, but we went back out to bid out chemistry costs, and we got 3 different proposals in, and between staff, so myself and Dina and Stephen from DRCW reviewed everything, looked at how, because some labs had higher cost for analysis but less cost for collection, or vice versa, or different parts of the analysis were more expensive. So kind of after laying everything out, we were able to really look at kind of an apples to apples comparison on cost as far as total cost went. And in the end, we ended up going with First Environmental Lab. So last go round, we were with Microbac out of Indiana. For this next 5-year chunk, we'll be with First Environmental. Overall was the best price. We have a number of members amongst all 3 groups that use First Environmental. They're based out of Naperville. So that's what we're going to go forward with. Even with that, our cost increase across the different years, we were looking at potentially as much as a 20% increase in chemistry costs. So we went back through and kind of reviewed some of the analysis that we were doing, and then the number of collections to look to rein that cost in as much as possible. So with that, we ended up having an increase in dues. So the overall budget. So those are kind of my notes on that. So from an overall budget summary, now looking at what the numbers look like over the next few years. And really, again, looking specifically at this column here. And then looking at what dues are currently. And this was, I guess, another point of discussion in that our costs are different from year to year. So there will be some adjustment in dues from year to year. And that's related to how our monitoring component works. So the changes, and so overall we had changes, and I put the comparison up. So slight increases, they ranged from 2% to 5%, I think, overall. So what the kind of looks at what the membership dues were. And then the increases, and I think that's where some of these were a little more from a percentage standpoint of looking at Shanahan and Illinois American. And those are just changes in flow. And so Shanahan has completed their expansion, and with Illinois American, realizing that the Aubrey plant should have been included in this number, and it had not been in the past. Aubrey Hills, I think it is. And so that's where there's a slight increase in the design average flow for Illinois American, which then drives the rest of the calculation costs. And then looking at the costs specifically on the monitoring side, with the MBI costs, we don't have the specific cost yet for this year. We'll be reaching out to MBI to get that information. So this is an estimate with that inflationary rate added onto it. So this is the target that we'll be looking to stay under. And then our chemistry costs, we have a pretty solid, like we know what those costs are based on the general services agreement. So we have a general services agreement that is amongst the 3 groups, but we will still have our own specific contract with First Environmental for our work each year. We'll be approving that contract each year. But this is the total, based on all of their costs of what we're looking at. Go back a second here. So do you have any questions around the budget or any of the other pages of the budget that you may have had questions on? I can pull those up as well. Again, just unmute yourself. Feel free to just speak.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Jennifer, Brad Sims from ExxonMobil. I'm just curious on the TLWQS. Is that
Mhm.
budgetary number? Is that just the two members that are on today, or is there what is that how that value is arrived at?
Hold on, let me go back to that.
I'm-
So the,
I
yes,
guess
so
industrial members, I should say.
yeah, industrial, so in the overall calculation, I'm sorry, I didn't have the industrial number. So we, as far as industrial members go, we have Exxon, we have emails. And that is worked into the overall total of how we got to the, so I had a budget identified for the chloride TLWQS component that we had added to the budget last year. So I had more detail last year. Sorry, I did not share that this year.
I just was wondering now that that's in effect, if maybe some other companies are going to surface and participate per those provisions in the TLWQS.
Right. And I know there are still a few out there that should be members.
Mhm.
And as they get into this first year of compliance, they're going to have to figure that out. We've been reaching out to some folks. I know like Village of LaGrange is going to need to become a member because otherwise they're not going to be able to meet their compliance for that. And I've been in contact with their consultant. So yes, I would expect that we will get some additional members. Not very many. There's a few more out there that still have not committed to one group or the other yet.
Okay. Hopefully
And-
it's a little bit of contingency money though.
Right. And so I have, and I believe it's in the whole budget package, how we came up with our budget for the chloride component and how it was sort of divvied out, we'll say, for that particular line item. And so we had the industrial component and we had the wastewater component. And I believe, and I'm sorry, but I went through trying to figure out the most equitable way of breaking it out. And so following some of the discussions that we've had on the cause side, they used roads, lane miles. And since we already do all of our calculations off of acres within the watershed, we ended up breaking that down as based off of the acre rate. And MWRD as just a wastewater agency was ended up being a flat rate, and the industrial members is a flat rate. And so we used all of that to kind of break it out as to what the rate would be. For IDOT, that one is actually based on their lane miles because the acres don't work. We had lane miles, and it's lane miles within the entire TLWQS area.
Mhm.
Because it was one of those things where we didn't want to make it like cheaper to come join this group by a lot versus joining the cause group. And so, looking at it, where did it make the most sense? I'm breaking that up. So we ended up using, I believe, the lane mile calculation for that. So yeah, like I said, there is some more detail in the budget. I'm happy to go through that. Or share that with
Okay.
you.
But I guess my point was we may have some extra revenue from late joiners, either industrial or from the
Correct.
agencies.
Correct. And then we'll kind of take that into consideration for next year and make adjustments, because then going forward, it should be consistent.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Jennifer, I had one with the dues increase of, what was it, 4%? Is that
As average, yeah.
yeah, is that going to be just this year? Will it, do you think it'll go on as each year goes on, or?
It was a definite, so this year, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up my other sheet. Sorry, Windows made me restart this morning and I had to close everything. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Sorry about this. Just a second. Okay, so I believe that we will maintain. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so this was, okay, that was what, so this was part of the discussion that we had, I think, at the board level of, we have different monitoring costs each year. Do we stabilize costs overall every year? Or do costs go up and down based on those annual needs? And right now we're looking at the cost going slightly up and down each year for the next few years.
Okay.
Which, go back here. So that's where these overall numbers look a little different each year. And so I can put that together as far as from a planning perspective and provide that when we send out dues for this year. And I can include I can include the breakdown for the next couple of years, again, for planning purposes, noting that there may be some adjustments in those, but I can include that in what we send out.
Perfect. That would help. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Have other questions? Okay, can I get, if there's no other questions, I'm sure anything else, if I get a motion to approve the budget and dues as presented.
Motion, Shanahan.
In a second.
Seconded. Lennox. Okay, there's the poll. Okay, looks like we got everybody in. That motion carried. Okay. All right, and so the last kind of main order of business is the staffing contract. So as what was identified in the budget, the staffing contract, which I included in the meeting packet. So the only changes to it from our last year's contract, it's updating the dates and the total, and then updated what's in attachment A, which is kind of a list of tasks that we have identified. So obviously a lot of the same tasks of just keeping the organization going, and then some other specific tasks related to some of the items we're going to talk about later related to both chloride TLWQS stuff and then NARP related tasks. Any questions about the staffing contract? And can I get a motion then to approve the staffing contract as presented?
Motion, Shanahan.
And a second?
Second, Juliet.
Juliet, all right. Allison. All right, I'll launch our last poll. Steve, did you have a question? Or you were just raising your hand for the motion?
Just raising my hand for the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, looks like we have everybody in and that motion carried as well. So we are done with voting. And we can get into just kind of reviewing what we've been doing and where we're going for this year. Again, as we go through things, please feel free to just unmute yourself and ask questions about any of the items that we go through. So bioassessment, last year was our off year. So we sample for 4 years. We have our off year. And then we start our sampling season again this coming summer. So we worked with MBI to provide, we got all the DMR data from plants, worked with a couple of plants to help get that information into a usable format. I guess speaking on that, if there are any folks out there that could use some help with Excel and getting that into a more usable format, I'm happy to come out and spend some time. In partnership with DRCW and Lower Page River Watershed Coalition, as I mentioned, we went, got bids and negotiated a new general laboratory services contract. Again, we ended up doing that services agreement through amongst the 3 groups all together, but we will all have our own individual contracts season by season based on the services needed for that year. So the upcoming year, because we are back to doing main stem displays, MBI will be doing all of our collection because we need to do it from a boat. And so that this year and next year, and the laboratory will just be doing our analysis. Sorry. Here we go. And then also working with MBI, providing any other information that they've been asking for, clarification on information. But we do expect to have a draft copy of both the main stem report, which would include, essentially we ended up sampling over 3 years on the main stem because of a lot of rain in 2019. So we had 2018, 2019, and 2020. All that information is being combined in a single report. And then we also will have the Hickory Creek report. And we're really expecting that in over the next couple of weeks. And as soon as we have a draft that we've reviewed, we'll get it out for some comment for anybody who's interested in reviewing that. NARP related, we did meet with dischargers last year, discussing the phosphorus target for wastewater effluent limits based on the IPS model thresholds. We are going to continue those discussions. We went through the whole process of requesting and reviewing proposals for the development of doing a strategy for developing an ARP for the main stem. Currently working with Tetra Tech right now, assembling all the available data so they can do some initial review, which was their kind of task 1. And I felt it was likely better for them to go through that task 1 of reviewing all of the existing data and then hold a kickoff meeting for task 2, which really kind of gets into goals and how we want to move forward with that. And so we will look to be scheduling a meeting, I believe sometime in February, to get that kicked off. From the TLWQS side of things, all of this work has been in partnership with Hannah and the Chicago Area Waterways Chloride Work Group. So we did finalize the minimization plan templates. We basically have an annual report template completed, and we learned some things from the PMP template as far as making it easier for staff, municipal staff, organizational staff to complete it. And so we've made some adjustments on that. So that'll be out there soon on kind of the idea. Or actually, I think Hannah, I don't know if you want to chime in. We gotten that actually out to members.
Yeah, so we have shared the annual report template. If you're on the chloride committee list from the lower displays, I have that email list shared with the cause email list as well for when we're sharing large group things. So if you've got someone on the chloride committee list, they should have gotten it and should have seen it. If you want to be added to my TLWQS list specifically, just please let me know, or let Jennifer know, and we can get you on that list so that you're also getting our TLWQS emails. And make sure that you can get that information that you need.
Thanks. Yeah, so we wanted to get that template out ahead, or at least early in the winter, so that everybody could see the information that they were going to need to collect, because they're going to need to, their first annual reports will be due July 1st for this current winter. So that stuff is out there, and those are also posted on the website as well. We put together, working with members, some documentation and calibration kind of templates or forms for those organizations who maybe don't have that kind of have those types of templates already put in place or documentation put in place. We held at least 7 kind of TLWQS basics mentoring sessions early last year, like in the May timeframe, kind of really going through what the TLWQS is and what people need to do. We held a working session to put together the pollutant minimization plans, and then we hosted 2 calibration mentoring sessions back in September. So those, we're going to continue to do mentoring sessions into the future, and we've been getting an input from members on topics. So I know liquids is definitely going to be in the mix, probably in a couple of different formats. I worked with several members to review their PMPs and help with some of the more kind of editing and really more of just the side of Word of making things look the way that they needed to look to get ready for submissions to IEPA. And then all of the PMPs that we have received are posted on the website. So we made and revised the section for the TLWQS on the website, and we have a space for each of the members. So you can click on the name of the member and their PMP is there, and when we get annual reports, they will be posted there with the PMP, so that everything for that entity, it'll be there together on the website. And that was one of the requirements within the TLWQS, that the PMP as well as annual reports are made public. And so this is at least one way to do that. You're obviously welcome to post these things on your own websites, but being posted on our website for the Watershed Group would fulfill that requirement. Organizationally, we completed our financial audit with tax returns in. We did the MS4 report for members last year, so one of the first tasks of the new fiscal year. So that'll be something I'll be working on shortly to have that done in the March timeframe. And then just maintaining the website that we host jointly with the Lower DuPage, continuing to work on outreach materials, and then hosting the de-icing workshops that we did last fall. So we have another slide on those. So yeah, again, with the TLWQS, we do actually, I think we changed the title on this. I forgot to update the screenshot, but we have the TLWQS section on our work section under lower displays, and then kind of revised things up here. So you can click on either of these boxes and it'll take you down to that section. But we have our frameworks or templates for the PMPs and the documentation. We have some other just background support information about the TLWQS. Oops, sorry. And then, like I said, we have all the reports by organization. So you can click on the organization and see the reports. Again, when the annual reports come due, this is where they'll get posted. Some of the kind of work group assistance related to TLWQS. So the things that we as the work group are required to do as part of this program, and the things that we've been doing to help with just assisting. And the whole point of a watershed-based variance is that we're all working on these things together. And again, since we're split between TLW or between cause and lower displays, working on these things together. So having the PMP templates, and documentation templates. We have education outreach materials related to chlorides. So this is stuff as lower displays that we've been working on for a number of years. This is definitely continue to work on these things to help meet this requirement within TLWQS. We have been working on the Salt Smart parking lots and sidewalks winter maintenance training and certification program. And so this will be available obviously to all of our members, as well as kind of directing if you hire any kind of contractor to put salt down, any kind of winter de-icer down that has chlorides in it, that contractor also has to be following all the same BMPs that you as the petitioner has to follow. So going through this Salt Smart certified program, we're setting it up so we meet all of those TLWQS requirements. We did, and Hannah has been a big part of this, just completed the manual, and we'll have it posted to the Salt Smart website very soon. We're working on seeing about getting it translated to Spanish as well, and we'll be holding workshops, training workshops. Probably test out. We're definitely testing out some this spring, but then in the fall, this will be the parking lots and sidewalks training that'll be held. In addition to the roads training that we've been doing with Fortin Consulting, which is now Bolton and Mink. And then we're also going to be discussing holding an in-person, more like symposium workshop day that will really be geared more towards that management level and looking at practices, new practices, having some of our members talk about the different ways that they're implementing items in their programs. And this will be kind of beyond TLWQS, we're really looking at entities across northeastern Illinois. So that's that kind of regional. Oh, we've put together a winter maintenance joint training committee between Lower Des Plaines and cause. And so kind of looking at some, really thinking about that winter maintenance training workshops from that regional perspective, and what else do we need to be focusing on to meet the needs of our members. Put together the annual report template, and we'll be providing any assistance that is needed for our members to complete those templates or complete the annual report. And then as part of our requirements to take all of the information from those annual reports for years 1, 2, and ideally 3, and put that into a status report. The challenge with like 3 years is technically your annual report is due July 1 and our status report is due July 1. So we'll have to kind of see in year 3 if we can't get those annual reports sooner to us so that we can do the status report and include all 3 years. And then as we get towards the end of our first 5-year cycle of the TLWQS, we're going to need to do a reevaluation that will be submitted to the Illinois Pollution Control Board. And so that's part of what's in that TLWQS budget line in our annual budget, is that we're kind of putting money aside every year to build up some funds, because at least the direction I think that we've gotten so far is that we will likely have to hire an attorney to be able to go through that whole reevaluation process. And so between the Lower Des Plaines and the cause, kind of building up some funds so that we'll have some money that we can jointly work with an attorney to help us out with that reevaluation. So just a summary, kind of moving on to the NARP. So I had these slides in our last annual meeting. We've used them in a couple other places, but just as a reminder of sort of what the NARP is and what our requirements are. And this is coming kind of summarized out of the language in our permits. So it is 2023 and our NARP will be due at the end of this year. So that really will be a big focus of our work of pulling all those pieces together. for this year. So we have the ability to work with other stakeholders in the watershed to figure out the most effective way to deal with the phosphorus related impairments. So this was important in that we can all be working together on this and do a joint NARP for the watershed. We have the ability to determine our own target levels, which is what we're using the IPS model for at least the wadable streams. Because either you got to come up with your own target or you take the NSAC recommendation of 0.1 milligrams per liter for a permit limit. So we need to identify phosphorus input reductions both at the point source and the non-point source point sources, and then kind of determine based on any assessment of the relevant data of whether we have an impairment related to phosphorus or not, and then how are we going to, if we do, how do we make the needed reductions? So having a timeline as to what reductions are necessary, both from point source and non-point source measures, and needs a schedule. And it can include provisions for water quality trading. At this point, this has not really been, it's hanging out there. We have the ability to do it. I'm not sure that we will utilize that. So kind of looking again at sort of the components. So having, like many plans, having that background information and all, summarizing the existing data that we have, will be a whole discussion component around what the IPS model is and the explanation of the target, the in-stream target of total phosphorus. So out of that model, and this again, IPS model is for the tributary streams. We have an in-stream target that ranges between 0.11 and 0.28 milligrams per liter of total phosphorus in-stream target. And so looking at what effluent limit to get that would be needed so that we can hit that target in stream. So those are the discussions that we have been having with the wastewater operators that are on those tributaries, and we will continue kind of refining and coming to some resolution on where everybody is at with those targets and how they would be implemented. There's a lot of room as to exactly how a limit gets implemented as far as the rolling geometric mean or annual means, annual averages. So looking at the different ways that can be hit. We have a contract right now with DRCW, an agreement with DRCW to co-fund this analysis of dissolved oxygen and how it works within the IPS model and relates that data to our wadable streams. So that is in progress, and that what comes out of that, we have a draft report for that, I think at this point. What comes out of that will be included as a component in the NARP. The non-point source analysis, so looking at the street sweeping and leaf collection recommendations. Again, trading program if it's warranted, and then tasks around, that we will continue to do the bioassessment and expanded DO chlorophyll 8 kind of monitoring to continue to collect that data for the watershed. And then what comes out of our project that we're just starting with Tetra Tech, so that strategy for how we are going to address nutrient issues on the main stem displays will be, that strategy will be included in the NARP, and will outline what our steps are, over the next 5 years, and what the plan will be. Because from the perspective of IEPA, the NARP was not meant to be, you do this once and you're done. It's, this NARP is, you had 5 years to complete the first NARP. It'll be back in your permit again, that, that'll be like 2028, that will be, completing the next round of that report, the update to that report. So the strategy for the main stem, there'll be steps outlined for the next 5-year chunk. So again, we're going to continue. So the tasks for this year, how do we just pulling everything together for the final report? So continue to meet with the operators and refine that target. Again, this is based on the IPS model, and we have some good modeling from DRCW and Lower DuPage in looking at how there are different ways of implementing a target. So we're looking at a 0.35 milligrams per liter effluent limit, and there's a lot of modeling that they've done in their streams showing that by using that versus like when they looked at 0.5 and then looking at the 0.35, and that if by having an effluent limit of 0.35, they were able to be within that target range of 0.11 to 0.28 milligrams per liter. And so comparing all of our in-stream data for those tributaries, and it's very comparable to data that we have from DRCW and Lower DuPage. And so looking at making the argument that instead of spending the funds to do more qual 2K modeling, which would be really quite expensive to do modeling on every one of our tributaries, that there is a certain level of confidence that by using the 0.35 effluent target or effluent limit, that we would be able to hit that in-stream target. And so that is how, what we needed to agree upon across the plants, that's how we're going to move forward with that component, and that's how the target we're going to use to meet the NARP for the tributary streams. Still working on assembling kind of that watershed information and existing data section, working with Alex on our staff to do that. So we have, I believe we have a draft report of the dissolved oxygen project. So it's in progress. We're going through and reviewing that draft report. There's just some, I think, final analysis that'll come out of that, and that'll be included. We'll have the project completed, working with Tetra Tech. So we're trying to target on having that done by like midsummer. And then that'll be, the kind of likely the last piece that will be put together for the draft of the NARP. We want to be able to get that out midsummer, mid to late summer, so that we can get it out to everybody for comment and review. We've had some ongoing discussions both with the Illinois EPA. If I have this in here or not. Ongoing discussions with Illinois EPA about the use of this target, as well as with the environmental advocacy groups of folks like Albert Ettinger and Prairie River Networks folks, so that this won't be a surprise when we put it out there. Kind of as most of who work with IEPA, can talk to them and present them information, but you don't really get a whole lot of feedback. But like I said, at least it's not going to be a surprise as to what we're going to have in our NARP. So if there are any questions about that at all. So other tasks for 2023. So we will be getting back into bioassessment sampling. So we'll be back on the lower section of the main stem. So approximately, well, from the mouth down at the Kankakee up to about the 355 bridge. That's about our break point between sort of our lower section and the upper section. So will be all main stem sections that are main stem sites this year. And I think we add as well as at like the mouth of the I&M canal and the Ship and Sanitary Canal, and we do one site on the Kankakee River as well, just so we have a comparison as Kankakee and Des Plaines come together to form the Illinois. And so having something to compare information with as it's leaving our watershed. As part of that, we will be doing some continued dissolved oxygen monitoring. They'll be in partnership with NBI, and then the fecal coliform monitoring for MS4 reporting. And supporting TLWQS members with the first annual report, and working on some other training materials to support those programs. Some more work, also obviously continued work with just our general outreach materials, but would definitely like to be sitting down and talking with some members who would be interested in helping us evaluate our materials, as well as like, are there other formats or other topics or things we'd really love to get input to make this stuff as useful as possible. And then we'll be, again, hosting our winter de-icing workshops to meet those annual training requirements, and they're just going to look a little bit different this fall. So like I mentioned, we did hold workshops in September, October. We did 4 public roads, 2 parking lots and sidewalks. We did this in partnership with, you can see all the logos there, the different watershed groups, with Lake County, and a few others that helped us with kind of getting the word out. We had over 900 participants from all over northeastern Illinois. I think we ended up with a few $100s of net income off of this as a group. And as a group, we decided, because all of the kind of money in and out went through the Conservation Foundation to make it easier from an accounting perspective. So we ended up with, let's say, somewhere around $500. So instead of kind of sending that back to each of the groups, it's going to be held in an account to just put towards our workshops this coming fall. And that seemed to be the easiest way across all of the groups to do that. Quick overview of the spring outreach materials. So these were the outreach materials that were developed in 2022. So although they were developed in 2022, we try to, as we put these together, make them somewhat timeless. So, they were created last year. If you didn't use them last year, or even if you did, they're still available on the website to use in your upcoming outreach to your residents. And so last year, we really tried to focus on making sure that we had items or materials for all of the topics that are specifically called out for in the MS4 permits. So we added a few new topics related to that. So what kind of seemed a little odd, maybe from other stuff that we've done in the past, but that's why we did it, is to specifically hit on those items that as an MS4 you're supposed to have materials for. So looking at the proper paint disposal and leaking vehicles. And I think the other one was green infrastructure, which we started to hit on in the summer. So we did a general what is green infrastructure blog post, and then each season we've been picking up a specific green infrastructure practice to talk about. So these are some of our summer 2020 items. We did work with a number of members. Well, within the Lower Des Plaines, we worked with the Forest Preserve District, and then a couple other members within the Lower DuPage to put together some launch signs, so canoe launch signs. So that was something that was kind of done outside of the work group once we put these materials together. But we ended up making about 12 signs in total that we work with, specifically with members on that, and the members paid for the signs. Fall topics, again, we always hit on fall leaves and try to freshen up some materials and provide more materials in different formats around leaves. We hit on bioswales from a green infrastructure topic, and then trying to tie back to the things that are in our streams, kind of the why we do the things that we're doing to protect that biodiversity within our streams. Again, winter hitting on our salts topics. We did pull in some materials on water softeners. So for those who are particularly on well water, looking at that as a source of chlorides and different ways to reduce chlorides through the type of water softener that you use. And we did a video and blog post on how to make brine at home, be able to use it on your driveway and sidewalks. So that's posted to the website. And we have some new posters. So all of that material is available both on the LDP Watershed's website as well as Salt Smart. So upcoming for 2023, since most of our communities are looking at the changes in the drinking water source, and there's a lot of talk and focus around water conservation measures, particularly as water rates are going to be increasing over the next couple of years. We went back through and kind of looking at some of the materials that we've had in the past that definitely have a water conservation benefit, but that benefit maybe wasn't highlighted. So really kind of looking back through like how to highlight that water conservation benefit for, things. I mean, rain barrels is fairly obvious, but to really call it out for people. And then also a couple of things just on some indoor and outdoor water safety tips. So all of these materials are posted to the website for spring. We targeted rainwater harvesting, so looking at it both from like kind of a home scale of like rain barrels, but then also for some of the larger systems, some information about both above ground and underground cisterns for businesses. And we'll continue to talk about water conservation efforts into the summer as well. So one of the things I always put it out there that we're happy to work with any of our members to customize materials. And so this was one. I was hoping that maybe if I had something really specific, it might help the thought process a little bit on your end about how maybe we can work with you on these. So this is a new poster or graphic that Leah put together. So we have a post on how to conserve water outdoors that has all of these tips in it with a little bit more information. So she put a nice graphic together that just highlights all of them. And this graphic can be used in social media, and click on the graphic, it goes to the post, but it could also be used as like a handout. We put the QR code on there. So that QR code right now would go to the blog post that's at the LDP Watershed's website. But if you have other materials or you want to take that blog post and incorporate it into your own website, we put a QR code to that. We could add logo to it. It's something that you could have either as an electronic document or something that could be printed out, handed out to residents at different events. So here's just an example of kind of how we can work with you to customize things, specifically for your community. This is also one that love some feedback. Like, would this be both the graphic as well as the blog post something that would be useful in Spanish or another language in your community? If there's interest in that, that's definitely something that we can work on. We actually potentially specifically for this one we have some contacts at one of the high schools, and there's a group contacts with a teacher who might be interested in working with some of her students to take this on, specifically this one on as a project. So it'd be sort of an education component as to why are we interested in water conservation, work with those students, but then have them actually do translation into Spanish. Since many members of this particular group are native Spanish speakers. So it might be nice from an educational standpoint, working with the students on that, but also to give us something that might be really useful to other communities as well. So if this is something that's of interest to you, please reach out to me. Leah and I would be happy to sit down and talk with folks, whether it's this piece or any of the pieces that we've put together so far. And if you have other specific ideas or specific messages, whether it's around water conservation issues or anything else that's related to water quality, conservation related type messaging that you're interested in trying to do more of with your community, please reach out. Again, we have our Facebook posts, our Facebook page for the Watershed group. Leah's been posting our newer materials, particularly related around winter She's kind of has a schedule of them, so that we're trying to get something posted every week up there. So this is something that you can definitely go and follow, be able to share the messages that we post here, or at least see how we're posting them, and use that same sort of format on your own Facebook pages for your community. All of our membership meetings get posted to the Will County Watershed's YouTube channel, and that can be linked from the website. We have a section for meetings and minutes that you can get the links to. And just some upcoming things. The cause chloride work group meets quarterly. I'm sorry, I put Zoom. They're actually on Teams. They meet quarterly at 1 p.m. So our next meeting will be the 15th. We've been combining our lower Desplaines chloride committee with this meeting, seeing as they're pretty much just focused on chlorides. So other than a little bit of business at the beginning of the meeting to approve minutes and things like that, the rest of those meetings are just focused on chlorides and the TLWQS. So it seemed to make sense to join those committees together, or our committee with their work group meetings, so that we can have that discussion kind of all at once, all together. And like Hannah mentioned earlier, if you are not on that mailing, so if you have not gotten emails from Hannah over the last couple of months, and are interested in participating in that chloride work group or chloride committee, and these meetings, and getting notices about the meetings or anything else related to TLWQS, let me know and we can get you on that list. Our meetings going forward, following that same schedule that we have been, and sorry, this should say 2023. I will fix that before we post this. 2023 meetings, March 23rd, May 25th, July 27th, September 28th, and November 30th. So that fourth Thursday of the month, except November, we're in that fifth Thursday because of Thanksgiving. But that's our schedule for 2023. Any other questions? Anything else anybody wants to bring up? This is all I have. All right. Well, I got you done in just over an hour. Appreciate everybody attending. Like I said, questions about anything that we discussed here today, or questions about NARP, questions about the TLWQS or our outreach materials, please feel free to send me an email. We will be getting out invoices for the next fiscal year by the end of March, early April is our target. With that, there'll be, we'll ask people to update any of their contact information. So if you have any new staff, that should be included. And I've been getting some emails throughout the year as staff have changed or new staff are coming on. We definitely want to make sure we're keeping that information up to date and that everybody's getting the emails and, the appropriate person who that invoice should go to, and making sure that we're up to date too on permits. So if you have, as permits are being renewed, I would really like to get a copy of them. I've been going through all my files and emails, make sure I have them all tracked in, but definitely a few I'll be reaching out to make sure I have your most up-to-date wastewater permit. So beyond that, hopefully everybody's had a good start to their new year, and we will see everybody in March.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks for leading the group. Appreciate it, Jennifer.
Thanks.